Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to this webinar on solar energy investment opportunities in Mozambique. My name is Mate Hayes from SolarPower Europe, and I am the coordinator of SolarPower Europe's Emerging Markets Task Force. And so in today's webinar, as the title suggests, we will be talking about business opportunities in Mozambique for solar energy development. And so before giving the word first to the leader of our Emerging Markets Task Force, Stefano Mantelassi from Energy Solutions, and then to Jan Cloin from the Africa-EU Renewable Energy Cooperation Program, I would just like to give you a brief background on what SolarPower Europe is doing in emerging markets. So in March this year, we, upon the interest of signaled by a number of member companies, including Eni, SolarPower Europe decided to launch a new member-led working group, the Emerging Markets Task Force, and so after a series of physical meetings this year, I think we've already had 3 or 4 meetings this year, and the number of telephone calls and conference calls to discuss about different emerging markets around the world. We are currently working on a number of markets, of emerging markets, to create business opportunities and open up new possibilities for member companies of SolarPower Europe. And one of these, one of the priority markets identified by the Emerging Markets Task Force is Mozambique, and so much from my side. With this, I would like to give the word to Stefano Mantelassi from Eni Energy Solutions, who is the chair of our Emerging Markets Task Force, and who will give us more background on what we are doing in the Emerging Markets Task Force, how we have identified the priority markets and priority activities in the Emerging Markets Task Force, and what led to today's webinar. Stefano, welcome to this webinar, and please.
Thank you, Mate. So welcome to all the participants, and a special thank to Jan Cloin that is making available his time and his knowledge to the members of the task force. As Mate has anticipated, I work for Eni Energy Solutions Department, and I am in charge for renewable energies in renewable energies activities in sub-Saharan Africa, and I am the chair of the task force. To remind that the 2 vice chair are Jens Martin from E.ON and Jean-Pascal Bamba from ENGIE. Mate has anticipated the framework of the development of the initiative. What we decided is that in order to make effective the work of the task force, we had to select some countries on which we should work, and so through a vote we have identified 5 work streams, 4 who are focusing on countries and 1 on the financing instruments. We have leaders for each work stream. The leader for the financing instruments work stream is Damien Ricordeau from Green. And for the countries, we have Jens Martin from E.ON for India. We have Alden Lee for Myanmar, and Bruno Gerard from Envision for the workstream on Francophone Africa, and myself, Stefano Mantelassi, on Mozambique. The work in the work streams is organized in such a way that there will be, let's say, 3 phases. One phase where we will present a matrix that collects and puts together the main information about the countries of the 5 work streams, and this will be presented at the next meeting of the task force on the 27th of September in Brussels. And then there will be a subsequent phase for the presentation of the country report, and then the third phase for the dissemination of the information that has been collected and developed during the work of the work stream. So the webinar that we have organized today is within the framework of the Mozambique task force, and Jan will present. I will briefly introduce to you the experience of Jan, that currently works as a deputy team leader for projects in Africa in the EU Renewable Energy Cooperation Program, RECP. Jan has a master's degree in renewable energy and international development, and he's an expert in renewable energy and rural electrification. He has a long experience of 15 years in regions like Africa, Pacific, and Europe, and his specific knowledge is on energy policy, photovoltaic, wind, biofuels, hydropower, and sustainable rural identification. Before RECP, he has worked as a renewable energy engineer at the Fundo de Energia in Mozambique, where he lived for 5 years. Then as a renewable energy expert at the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Then at the South Pacific Applied Geoscience Commission, the Energy Research Foundation in the Netherlands, and also at the UNDP headquarters in the Energy and Environment Department. So after the introduction, I will leave the floor to Jan.
Thank you, Mate, and thank you, Stefano, for the kind introduction. Yes, I'm happy to have the opportunity to present a little bit on the solar energy opportunities in Mozambique. I am going to do this under the label of RECP, which is the Africa EU Renewable Energy Cooperation Program. We are in the process of relabeling ourselves into Get Invest, hence the different names of the program, and Get Invest stands for Global Energy Transition Investment Program. We have done this presentation at the request of the Task Force Emerging Markets at SolarPower Europe, and we believe this is a nice format which we would like to do for other countries as well. But let's focus on Mozambique for today. First, I'll give an introduction of the country and the economic indicators, electricity sector, and the way the electric sector is governed. Then I will discuss the potential of solar energy in the country and the opportunities that exist for the various business models in solar energy. And finally, I will give some conclusions and recommended reference material for further study. The country Mozambique is huge, and it is, as a comparison, more than twice the surface of Germany. There are 6 neighbors, and that all speak English, and most, to a certain degree, depend on Mozambique for their access to the Indian Ocean. Mozambique is made up of 11 provinces administratively and 126 districts. However, most important decisions are still taken in the capital Maputo in the south of the country. The country is Lusophone, so everyone speaks Portuguese, and also a number of local languages are used. The infrastructure of the country is developing with a few east-west roads, mostly where there are ports towards another country in the on the other side of the country. And there is one road connecting from the north to the south. If there are floodings, some bridges or electricity networks are vulnerable, and circulation or provision of services can come to a halt. Mozambique is one of the least developed countries in Africa, and according to the World Bank, it is slightly above average sub-Saharan Africa to do business there. During the past years, the Mozambican economy has been very turbulent. The government was caught by the IMF establishing secret loans worth more than 2 billion, and they have not been able to trace back exactly where that money went. But the government was liable for these credits. These developments led to an outflow of capital and subsequent devaluation and inflation. A number of donors stopped their operations for a while, and they are slowly coming back. But in a period of 2 years, the national currency has almost halved in value. It appears stable now. However, the core issue of the hidden loans is still not publicly available, and there's still some questions around it. However, in the meantime, many investors in the gas and mining sector flock back into Mozambique because of its high potential for return on investments, and also because these deals would generate forex, and therefore capital repatriation should be possible in these projects. There's also quite some investment in related infrastructure, such as harbors, airports, roads, and railroads, which benefit the whole region. Mozambique has a C status from Moody, which corresponds with highly speculative, and this means that it cannot easily access loans. And this has also an effect on state-owned enterprises, as we will see in the energy sector. Mozambique has many potential sources of energy. It's already a net exporter of hydroelectricity and is bound to further increase exporting capacity. There are advanced plans to almost double the current installed capacity of hydropower on the Zambezi River. And in addition, a number of medium-sized hydro power plants are in various stages of development. Mozambique has vast reserves of natural gas, mostly offshores, but also inland. For example, the Pande and Temane fields, which you can see here in orange. The gas reserves are an estimated 2.6 trillion cubic meters, and this is so significant that by 2025, it's expected that Mozambique would become the 4th largest exporter of natural gas in the world. Mozambique also has significant coal reserves of an estimated 20 billion tons, of which about half are of export quality, and the other half is likely to be utilized in local power stations for electricity export, again in the region. And most of the coal is located here in the TET region, and most of the gas that is now confirmed is offshore in the Rovuma Basin. Overall, renewable energy has plenty of opportunities, with hydropower opportunities scattered over the middle and the northern regions, while vast wind potential is highest in the south, extreme south here, and in Tete province. Various opportunities also exist to convert biomass to electricity and/or fuel. However, this has not been taken up in a big way yet because of viability issues, mainly due to uncertain demand. Electrification of the country is moderately developed in urban areas like Maputo, Beira, and Nampula, but rather underdeveloped in the remainder of the country. Since last year, all capitals of administrative districts have been connected to the electricity grid, which means the country is covered according to the utility. However, in many cases, this only involves connections to a few government buildings and shops in the immediate center of those capitals. Most mobile phone masts still are powered with a combination of diesel and solar energy. Under the new electrification strategy of Mozambique, utility EDM is responsible for electrification up to 100 meters from the low voltage power lines. Additional distances must be funded from an energy account, which is financed through a levy on kilowatt-hour sales. Once set up, World Bank is also likely to contribute to this fund, but this mechanism doesn't yet exist. If a rural area gets connected with electricity, EDM is finding that households usually utilize less than half a kilowatt-hour per day, making grid extension and the maintenance of the lines a tricky exercise from a financial point of view. While generation costs from Hydro Kahora Bassa, which is here in TET, in the Zambezi River, are very low, and they are to the tunes of 1 to 2 cents US per kilowatt hour. The majority of this power is contractually committed to Mozal, which is an aluminium smelter, which is in the south of the country, and Eskom here in South Africa. And this is also the line that you see going into South Africa. It's exporting the electricity from the Hydro Kahora Bassa. The remainder of the power that that should go to Mozambique. It's first exported to South Africa and then re-imported with significant wheeling charges. Additional growth in demand is now met with a few medium-sized hydropower plants and gas-fired power plants in the south. With these additions, the energy mix average costs have gone up towards 8 to 9 cents US. As a result of the devaluation of the Metical and these rising costs of generation, EDM has been allowed in the recent years to adjust their tariffs a few times already and is expected to do so early next year after the elections to get back into cost recovery. The energy sector in Mozambique is governed by MIREM, but it also has the authority over the mining and fossil fuel exploration. In the current energy law, they are the authority to obtain permits, concessions, and licenses for power generation. Hidrocahora Bassa, HCB, is the entity that is responsible for hydropower production that I just mentioned on the Zambezi River and is fully owned by the state. EDM is the utility and it's also fully state-owned and is responsible for some of the generation, most of the transport, and all of the distribution. EDM's ability to borrow or engage in investments is limited, mainly due to solvability issues at government level, but mostly EDM has a minority stake in renewable energy investments through in-kind contributions such as connecting the plant to the grid. The sector was designed to be regulated by Sinelec, which never really obtained the power nor the means to do so. In a revamp, the recently adopted law was created to have a regulator called ARENE as an energy regulator, but it's still on paper and it's in the process of setting itself up. It's expected that some of the work on licensing, concessions, and permits would eventually be transmitted to ARENE, with the final authority still remaining in MIREM. ARENE would also be responsible for the tariff review of electricity. FUNAI is a government organization that's responsible for investment and operation of remote infrastructure, including fuel stations and over 2,000 solar home systems spread over Mozambique. FUNAI has thus electrified schools, hospitals, houses of government personnel, as well as shops and houses. FUNAI either charges a monthly fee or in some cases charges a kilowatt-hour price equivalent to the national tariff through prepayment meters. FUNAI has also some hydropower mini-grids. It is exploring operation by private companies, but it has not yet found a transparent mechanism to do this. FUNAI has also identified a carteira de projetos, which is a list over 600 areas which could be electrified through a mini-grid, solar and hydro. It has invited private parties to come forward to develop these projects. Some have already been selected to be built with public money, and some may be built through PPPs. Finally, there's the Investment and Export Promotion Agency, APX, which I should mention. They assist companies with processes involved in investment, but also in repatriation of capital. More detailed information can be found in the reference that I will give later. Each Mozambique government has a 5-year plan, Plano Quinquenal de Governo, PQG, and this describes the policies for the sitting government period. In the current version, it's foreseen that by 2030, all people would have access to energy. There are two issues with this. First, there's no distinction on the tier of this access, with great variation expectations to be likely. In addition, there's no clear plan adopted yet to achieve this. World Bank has assisted government with an electrification strategy, but there's hardly any mention of off-grid electrification in it. Solutions that do not involve the grid, according to the World Bank Office, are only temporary solutions. Further, in the current setup of the energy sector, there's only a limited role for the private sector, merely as contractors to install, rather than to co-invest or to cooperate assets. It is expected that the new energy law provides some room for private sector involvement in operating assets, including mini-grids. However, this law must still pass various stages of the legislative process. As mentioned, the World Bank is assisting the government of Mozambique on a draft electrification strategy, and the US is supporting the government in a review of the energy law. Japanese funding goes to an electrification master plan, which is currently ongoing. It is, amongst others, looking at least cost electrification strategy, identifying areas for grid and off-grid electrification. Likely outcomes of this study is based on earlier research that about 45% of Mozambican households would be better off electrified through decentralized solutions. This is a study done by the Joint Energy Research Council of Europe. The UK has brought private sector, government and donors together to sign off on a joint approach to develop the off-grid solar market, which is now the guiding document for the Brilio program about to be launched. The EU has established a joint declaration with its member states and the Mozambique government, and it aims at market development for both central and decentral renewable energy solutions. In addition to this, KfW is currently designing a Get Fit program for central, but also possibly decentral renewable energy solutions. AFD, the Agence France de Développement, is assisting EDM and possibly also the regulator with a design for an auctioning scheme for renewable energy. Enabel from Belgium is working inside Funai on building a capacity and a number of off-grid investments. In addition to these technical assistance packages, there are a number of funds that currently have money available either on a grant or on a blending basis for various types of private sector driven pilots, market development efforts, and awareness campaigns. Back to the technology. The solar energy potential in Mozambique is about twice the insolation level of Northern Europe. There is a slight variation between the north and the south, but the best solar energy potential is again here in Tet province. And that is bordering Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Malawi. The Renewable Energy Atlas, which has been established in 2014, has an online projection of this potential and also identified sites where renewable energy projects may make sense from a GIS analysis point of view. That includes analysis of the population, the renewable energy potential, and the available infrastructure. And this is available online. It's a very good resource. And I will provide the link later. A very small fraction of the solar energy potential has been developed, with only 2 sites almost under construction. One is under construction, the other almost, and a few hundred megawatts are under study. A big question for the sites under development is whether they will fall under the auction regime, and this is likely, and how they would relate to EDM as an off-taker, otherwise shareholder. Current indications of cost level by industry players are relatively high, at 10 cents US. This may be related to first moving disadvantages and long preparation times, as well as the available limited infrastructure. It's clear, however, to all parties involved that these cost levels have to come down significantly to make the case for further integration of solar IPPs in the network. So let's look at the market segments. While there are some individual IPP opportunities, further possibilities are expected to come online through an online auction system that's expected to increase competition and also more transparent processes. The thinking goes a line of predefined sites that EDM will provide guaranteed connection to the network, but also these sites would assist in supporting the grid in remote hubs, distribution hubs. What is not clear, what the involvement of the regulator AREN will be in these auctions, and with the relatively low prices of national grid electricity, the business case for captive power, that's the second one, it's not very apparent, but with every tariff increase, the opportunities for captive power are also increasing. In addition, there is a number of institutions that would like to invest in rooftop systems just for PR or CSR arguments. It's not expected in the short term that this will be legally allowed, although under the current energy law and also the future energy law, it's not forbidden. It's just that there's no grid code and the utility doesn't allow it to happen. There are about thousands of sites that could be electrified with mini grids, and hundreds where a diesel generator could be replaced or partly replaced with solar and storage. Nevertheless, there are no provisions in the current energy law, no regulation to establish a cost-covering tariff, and there is also no security for investors in case a mini-grid would have to deal with arrival of the main electricity grid. The current review of the energy law is taking into account the Tanzanian model, which does have all these features, but it may take a while to materialize. Some headway has been made with hybridization of existing generation units, that's mining and tourism, and also telecom, but the market has not been very large so far. And then there's solar home system retailing, but it's very slow in its growth due to high distribution costs and limited purchasing power of the Mozambique rural population. Pay-as-you-go systems appears to slowly take off, but there are a number of issues with exposure, which is limited to the rural population has been hardly using mobile banking, and this is necessary for pay-as-you-go. So an additional problem with the pay-as-you-go retailers is that they have to fully pay all the taxes when they sell a system, whereas in reality they have the customer pay over a period of years, and therefore it should have a different fiscal treatment. However, if they would argue this way, they would need to apply for a banking license, which is also a restrained activity in Mozambique. So let's have a look at the projects that are currently in the market. Scatec is being built. Neoen is very advanced and should be announced anytime soon, but this is what we have been hearing for a few months already. And mostly in these two cases, EDM is both a shareholder and the off-taker. Guarantees for these projects have been very difficult to obtain, and this is one of the reasons of delay. In the case of Scatec, the sovereign guarantee was so problematic that in the end, Norfund provided the sovereign guarantee simulation, and that could unlock the investment. In the mini-grid sector, we have had contact with a developer from Germany who is preparing, together with Funai, a mini-grid on the island of Chiloane in Sofala province. There have been a few other initiatives, notably from JFS, which is a cotton producer, to build a mini-grid in Titimane, but it's now off the table due to a very long regulatory approval process, which wasn't finished. And then finally, the project was hammered due to the statement that EDM would electrify the area. And there's now 2 pay-as-you-go companies active on the market, and they are indicating that they have good growth numbers, and they see a lot of potential to expand further. There are only a handful of local companies that are operational in the development of renewable energy in Mozambique, but the number is slowly growing. A number of company representatives have taken an initiative 2 years ago to set up an association to speak with one voice to government, but also to avoid the duplication of efforts related to market information availability. There are quite a few of small companies which have expressed interest to join during a stakeholder meeting in 2017, and the organization has been legally established during 2018. AMER, Associação Moçambicana Energia Renováveis, wishes to implement on an activity including providing market information, networking, and increasing local company capacities with the support of the ALER, which is the Associação Lusofono Energias Renováveis, which looks after renewable energy in Lusophone countries. Let's see if I can move this slide. Yes, one up. Yeah. In addition to support towards establishing AMER, the RECP has also financed the ALER Renewable Energy Status Report, which I highly recommend as a resource for detailed information on the potential to do business in renewables in Mozambique. It's freely available online, and printed versions could be ordered through ALER. We have also worked on drafts for mini-grid legislation, which are currently being used as input in the design for the energy law under consideration. We also organized a large event in 2017 with over 300 attendees, including a trade mission and a B2B matchmaking. We are expecting to increase our level of effort in Mozambique through a country window for Get Invest, which would see us support AMER into a professional organization, providing information about the market opportunities as well as increasing capacity of local actors. In addition, our plans are to support the investment agency to promote renewable energy investment opportunities and create a one-stop shop in collaboration with CTA, the private sector association. Further, there are plans to continue to support the creation of legislation on the decentral energy towards private sector solutions, while with the responsible institutions. We also expect to support further deal flow through the finance catalyst by means of coaching of project developers and companies, as well as further support to achieve key milestone documents related to decentralized renewable energy projects. I've done a very quick and dirty SWOT for the private sector solar energy in Mozambique as a way to conclude my presentation. On the threat side, we note the potential political and economic stability of the country, as well as the strong government involvement in anything that has to do with energy. A great weakness is the high level of debt and the low credit rating of government. However, on the positive side, we note as strength the very high potential for solar energy all over the country, and of course, the integration in regional markets. This leads us to identify opportunities, which include that there are still very few actors in the market. There's a huge future demand for electricity that is still unserved, and the upcoming investments in gas, coal, roads, and harbors create an opportunity for flanking investments in renewable energy assets. So, as a conclusion, I would say investing in Mozambique is not for the faint-hearted, but there are many opportunities. If you go into Mozambique in the short to medium term, you will likely have to make an alliance with government-related institutions. And my take would be to do this through MOUs and agreements, but keep them at an arm's length when it comes to implementation, to avoid that your operation becomes dependent on these organizations, which may cause huge delays. And then the opportunities that I see that exist in order of relevance, I see and negotiated if possible, otherwise auction IPPs, hybridization of diesel, pay-as-you-go, mini-grid, and solar home systems. However, mini-grids would really require a little bit more regulation to be available, otherwise it's too risky. So in the recommended reading, I have given the country profile which we have on our website. I've given the link, and I presume that this presentation will be available to people after this. The link to the country status report of the excellent work that Alain did on this. Then the Renewable Energy Atlas. There is sometimes issues with connection with the server which is in Mozambique. But the atlas is available. You can see the projects, you can see the potential and the related infrastructure. And then also I would highly recommend to have a look at the Carteira de Projetos if you're interested in off-grid systems, because they have listed all the sites that they have identified, and they've done quite some groundbreaking work on that. That was it from my side. I'm very open to questions from your side to further clarify points of this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jan Cloin, Deputy Team Leader of the Africa EU Renewable Energy Cooperation Program. And so to all the participants, there is the possibility of asking questions to Jan Cloin and also Stefano Mantalassi, Chair of the SolarPower Europe Emerging Markets Task Force, in the panel, the application that you have opened to dial into this webinar. There is a field that allows you to ask questions, and my understanding is that so far we don't have any questions yet. So maybe I would give the floor to Stefano Mantalassi for a couple of minutes to maybe give us a short feedback on the presentation, and also maybe highlight the most important next steps in the Mozambique work stream of SolarPower Europe's Emerging Markets Task Force, and what activities we are planning, and how Emerging Markets Task Force members and SolarPower Europe members can benefit from being part of our initiatives. Stefano, do you have any feedback on that, or a couple of words?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mate, and a special thank to Jan. I have appreciated very much his presentation, a very clear overview about what the Mozambique solar market is at present, and the threats, opportunities, and potential it offers. I have to say that the Mozambique is one of the most typical market that are a target of the Emerging Market Task Force, because at the beginning we said that for us emerging is a country where there are a lot of opportunities, but at the same time the regulatory framework is not very much developed, and there is work to do in the country. And with his presentation, Jan has confirmed that. In terms of future work that the task force, the work stream on Mozambique intend to do, we want to, through the help of the organization who have already been active on the country, which is RECP and ALER, we want to be in touch with the newly formed AMER initiative, and work with them to help to support them in achieving their targets, and our plan is to do that in the next month before the end of the year. So and to do that in such a way that the contribution and the information that we get from AMER will support us also in writing the country report that we have to prepare in the next month. So this is a general comment, and I would like to ask a couple of questions to Jan about what he mentioned in his presentation. The first one is, what is the expected timing of the new energy law, and the process of the law? I mean, in this process, in the sense of who is entitled to make comments. I mean, have they maybe set up a session with ALER, so that there is a feedback also from the industry about what they are forecasting for the renewable energy in their new energy law? And the second question is related to the setup of the auction system. I would like to understand to what extent this idea is developed, and whether Mozambique intends to set up, let's say, their own rules, or if there is a plan maybe to be supported by existing programs like the scaling solar program.
Yes, thanks, Stefano Montelassi, for these remarks and the two questions. The drafting of the energy law is in a very early stage, and so we can expect, based on the earlier experiences, this process to last for at least 1 or 2 more years. And this is unfortunate, but it also provides, indeed, as you mentioned, the opportunity to influence the energy law. And I know that USAID, who's sort of hosting this process on behalf of Mirem, has foreseen a number of moments where stakeholders can engage with government to discuss the new energy law. Then also, first it has to go to the Council of Ministers. They have to say something about it, and then it still has to go through Parliament. And so I would be very surprised if this would be realized in 2019, and it can easily go into 2020. On the auctioning system, I also have very little details yet about exactly what they are about to do. This is something to surely for us to follow up with Agence France de Développement to find out exactly what the thinking is. But I already believe that they will not follow a scaling solar approach, which would come with a package of finance and a lot of things determined. So there would be much more degrees of freedom, but also therefore much more risks to be identified during the financing of the activities. So this is something worth following up, I think, for the task force. I'll leave it to that.
Thank you very much. And Mate Heis here again. And in the meantime, we have two additional questions also related to the solar actions in Mozambique. And I don't know, Jan, if you will be able to answer these questions, but I will read them out. The first one being, what are the estimated time frames for the solar auctions in Mozambique? And the second one, what capacity are the solar auctions likely to be structured around? Do you have any information on these aspects?
Yes, on the estimated timeframes, I know last year EDM talked about doing it this year, and I've heard that the consultants that are designing the process have just been recruited, so that means that it's very likely to only happen in the next year. That's 2019. And secondly, on the capacities, the information that I have is that we have to think of between, let's say, 20 and 60 megawatts for each individual sites. These are going to be sites where EDM thinks it's reasonable for them to have support on their network. And so they will be very close to distribution points and where distribution and transmission meet to support the network. And they would be spread over the country. The land would be available. As I said, the networking would be available. There would be in-kind contribution from EDM, but for the rest, the developer would have to bring the rest of the solution, including the finance.
Thank you very much. So I think there are no more questions. So if this is the case, then I would like to ask Stefano if you have anything to add, and if not, then I think we have reached the end of today's webinar. Stefano, is there anything else you would like to add or highlight?
No, there is nothing special in the sense that this webinar and this initial introduction falls very well in terms of timing within the framework of the activity that the emerging market task force is developing, because as I mentioned before, on the 27th of September there will be in Brussels the next meeting where the matrices for the work streams will be presented. So the matrix is something that is more detailed. There are a lot of information in it that to some extent may complement the general introduction that Jan has done. So I wanted to invite all the people who have attended to attend also the next task force emerging markets meeting on the 27th of September. As I said, we will present not only Mozambique but also other countries. So I kindly request and invite all the participants, to circulate this information to all the people and colleagues who might be interested in it.
Thank you very much, Stefano, for highlighting this. And indeed, you will find more information and the registration possibility about the Emerging Markets Task Force meeting on the 27th of September on SolarPower Europe's website, www.solarpowereurope.org. And if you have any specific questions on how you can get involved in the Emerging Markets Task Force, or any suggestions, or if you're already in the task force and would like to get involved in the Mozambique workstream or any other workstream, then please don't hesitate to contact me at m.heis@solarpowereurope.org, and you will find my contact info on the SolarPower Europe website also. So with this, I would like to thank our guest, Jan Cloin, from the Africa-EU Renewable Energy Cooperation Program. Thank you very much, Jan, for this very insightful presentation about Mozambique, and we really do hope that we will have the possibility to organize other similar webinars on other African markets covered by the RECP. And also thank you very much, Stefano Mantelassi from ENI Energy Solutions, and also the chair of our Emerging Markets Task Force, for giving us information on Emerging Markets Task Force of SolarPower Europe. And also thank you very much to the participants for being here today, and please do follow our activities and future webinars. You can expect more of them. Thank you very much and have a good rest of the day.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you to everybody. Bye-bye.